It was a coincidence, but in one day I've spent about a couple minutes on about 16 games I digitally own. Specifically 3 of these games being Warframe, Destiny, and Outriders. What do they all have in common? Well, that they're the least played out of all of these 16 games, but also that they fall under the subgenre of looter shooter. You shoot and kill things and you get rewarded for doing it. Games that fall under this genre are, for a lack of a better term, dull. Usually following a bunch of tropes like bullet sponge bosses, impossible to obtain items, and in general things like just having your progression being how much damage you do. As I stated before, in looter shooters, killing enemies and getting loot from them is all you do, and it begins to grow tiresome and repetitive. After a while, the gameplay becomes extremely stale. You have nothing to do because the shooting and looting is all there generally is to do. And that's bad, not because of the concept, but because of the design of it. Well, usually in games you do things over and over and over. There's usually something to that game that makes playing it once more absolutely worth it. What I'm talking about is called a gameplay loop. A gameplay loop is what you'll be doing to about 70 to 100% of the game. Every game has and needs them. Looter shooters in particular have them as well, but I can only describe them as time wasters. The focal points of a looter shooter is the loot, but I believe it is just mainly the loot. This is a problem because what takes up 50% of the game is looting, but the other half, which is shooting, is completely unaccounted for most of the time. Mechanics in these type of games for shooting are at best bare bones and uninspired. They do barely anything to stand out behind basic mechanics you've seen in other shooters. Thus, the shooter parts of looter shooters feel ultimately hollow, as while they're a part of the game, they're just a means to an end, which is the loot. But even then, the loot feel particularly hollow in what you get and what you have. What you loot you have will eventually be replaced, and what you get will also be replaced as well. A cycle of getting and replacing things, all of which changes nothing. Because of this, the game never changes, and what you play is already starting to wear down on you. In the beginning of this video, I mentioned Warframe and said it's a part of the same subgenre as Destiny and Outriders. However, I never mentioned that Warframe is actually a good looter shooter. In Warframe, you play as the titular Warframe, a humanoid flesh robot with unique powers and abilities. With it, you have primary, secondary, and melee weapons, and there's different Warframes with unique abilities and playstyle. In Warframe, you don't casually get weapons in the form of a drop, you craft them from various resources which you get from playing the game. In the game, weapons are different from each other and not really better than one another. Subsequently, depending on the weapon you're using, your playstyle changes drastically. Weapons don't become better simply because you're at a higher level of progression. In fact, the player is encouraged to make them stronger by themselves via the mods you pick up from playing the game. Warframe as a game changes over time, but what was established before is not abandoned. Quests in Warframe are stories within themselves that have meaningful rewards, which will always come around time and time again, and even better, they synergize with future content, as well as the fact that nothing introduced to the player is thrown away or forgotten about. This makes the content in Warframe have meaning, and keeps the players invested in coming back to play once more. In days like these, looter shooters are usually playing it safe. Warframe, however, is not. It's not content with abhorrent stagnation, and it's actually built off of a unique system which keeps and rewards the players and efforts in more ways than one.
Fight the powers that be, gotta get this. Reckless, got a checklist when I wreck it. Think before you get in the way, ain't no exception, sure you can lay. Infectious, yet the freshest and I'm restless. Check this, what you mess with is a death wish. Let's get ready cause you can't stop mine. Chainsaw, stop sign on your back blind side. Roll like a tank, hit like a tank. Laugh all the way with the money to the bank. Crush, kill, destroy your opponent. I'm